kind of nice getting home and having the interview that you recorded right when you woke up early this morning, just waiting for you to drop into a show and become episode 153 of Coast to Coast Pinball. Let's go. Welcome to Coast to Coast Pinball. My name is Nate Shivers. This is a podcast commentary. I am a man out of quarters. I feel silly saying that 153 times or whatever it's been. But I still will say it because it's a catchphrase. Anyway, so episode 153 is going to be awesome. I set up a Skype call for early in the morning out here in San Diego this morning with Andrew Highway, who's all the way across the Atlantic Ocean in England, and we are going to talk with Andrew about the exciting news and developments of their first game, of Highway Pinball's first game, Full Throttle, going into actual production. There are photos on their Facebook page, on Pinside. You can see cabinets being built, and Andrew will get into some of the details during this interview. I love having him on. He's a great guy to talk to. They've got a lot of potential, and you will hear the goals they're setting for themselves, which is pretty exciting, I must say. He took me by surprise with some of the things he told me. I think you're going to enjoy this episode. So without further ado, here is Andrew Highway. I would like to welcome to Coast Pinball for the first time, I believe, Andrew Highway of Highway Pinball. How are you, sir?
I'm very good, thanks, Nate. How are you?
I am good. It is 7 a.m. West Coast, so we're coming to you at a non-standard time because I think I owe that to you. I don't think I've talked enough about your pinball machines that are coming, and we're here to celebrate the actual start of production. So congratulations on the Full Throttle production happening.
Well, thank you very much, and also thank you very much for having me here today.
Absolutely. It's been an interesting project for me to watch because you started out, with this, it's sort of interesting original theme with Cersei's, yes, Animal House that you abandoned and went towards something you felt might play a little bit better, maybe worldwide. And as much as everyone seems to want original themes when they talk about themes, the original theme thing is tricky, as I'm sure you've come to realize.
Yeah, it's very tricky. It's very tricky. I mean, there's pluses and minuses to both sides of it. I mean, when you're dealing with a licensor, you're working with their intellectual property. And so therefore, you have to go through due process to get to a point where you can actually release a pinball machine. And that's fraught with pitfalls along the way because, there's all kinds of things like, the image rights of the individual actors. There's the sounds, the voices, the music, what you can show, what you can't show. There's a lot that you have to work your way through, and you still want to have enough material so you have a coherent game. Where if you look at the flip side of it, that when you're dealing with your own license, your own intellectual property, you can do whatever you want, really. Whatever music you want for it, you just go out and get it. Whatever imagery you want, you just draw it. You don't have to answer to anybody. But you kind of hit the nail on the head there. A lot of people say that they want unlicensed themes, but when unlicensed themes come out there, they're always having to compete against licensed themes that maybe have a lot more people interested in them, shall we say.
And I think it's probably a big advantage for a company like yours that's sort of getting itself off the ground to be, if you can afford to do it, and this is, I think, the trick for some companies, is to do an unlicensed theme first, because you can make all the mistakes, do everything on a game that you really are the puppeteer on, and then get yourself ready for whatever may come, whether it be a major license like your next game or anything else.
It's true, yeah. I mean, what you say is true. One way of looking at it is that it's like a test bed, if you like, for all of our hardware and our software. But to be honest, it goes on a lot more than that, because I'm very proud of the game that we've put together in Full Throttle, because having been a pinball player myself, I know what I like as a pinball player, and we know what other people like from talking to people. And we've got something with some very, very satisfying shots in it. And that's one of the reasons we changed from Cersei's Animal House to Full Throttle. One of the reasons was because a lot of people weren't really getting the whole Cersei thing. People know about other gods, if you like, but Cersei's one of the lesser known ones, and it was felt that people wouldn't really know or identify with this theme. That's one of the reasons why we changed it. But the other one is that the more we got playing, especially from a Whitewood point of view, the more we got playing Cersei, the more we realised just how fast and furious the layout was, and it kind of didn't lend itself as a theme to something which was, let's say, a more sedate barroom type environment. It lent itself to something with Fast and Furious gameplay, and of course motorcycle racing is just that, and it's also an activity which is maybe more widely known about. It appeals to maybe a broader demographic. And also to different countries as well, trying to sell aspects of Greek mythology to maybe foreign-speaking markets is quite an uphill challenge. Whereas, motorcycle racing, whether it's Japan or China or USA or UK, everybody knows about bike racing. So this is some of the reasons why we've got to where we are now.
One thing that I really admire about the way you've handled yourselves with this game and just watching it sort of from the bleachers, if you will, is that there was some early, anytime anybody releases anything to the internet especially, somebody has an opinion and somebody's going to criticize, and some of the criticism is just noise, and then I think you were able to, in my opinion, find some of the critiques that were actually genuine and we're trying to help. And I think you made some really key changes to Full Throttle, both in artwork and maybe some design ideas that are really going to, I think, make it a better game than it would have been had you just run with it and gone with it. And that's really to your credit that you could, I don't know, set ego aside a little bit and listen to the community and make a few changes. Can you speak to any of those things that maybe you didn't see or the company just didn't see and people started saying it and you said, okay, well, let's address that?
Well, do you know what? Well, it's interesting you say that. I mean, one of the key elements was the artwork, and it was clear from an early stage that the initial artwork package for Full Throttle just wasn't strong enough on every level, on the playfield level, especially on the backglass art. And it just made us realise that we really do need to seek other people's opinions at an early stage and an early part of the process, because if you don't and you go too far down a path and you get to a point and you think, that's it, great, it's finished, then you show it to people and then people really hate it. And they did. The first translate art that we did, it was likened to being a Hallmarks card. It was just very uninspiring. And then we at that point liked it, but then when we heard the criticisms, we looked at it and said, you know what, they're right. We got it wrong, and we put our hands up and said, okay, we need a different approach here. And then we started working with top artists like Doug Watson and Jack Hager, and we came up with two pieces of artwork that we're very proud of now, and we seem to. A lot of people seem to really like the artwork package now. So we had to go through some painful growing pains along the process, as with other aspects of what we've done too. I mean, we made some changes which had a massive impact on the game. And at one stage, we went from going to from a narrow body game to a wide body game, and a lot of people had concerns that it's going to be very slow, like wide body games can be. But the truth is that our game is so fast, even as a wide body now, it plays faster than most narrow body games do. And in fact, I think you'd be hard pressed to actually find a faster game than Full Throttle.
No, I agree completely. It does play really, really fast, and it has geometry that I think when I first played it, I was a little almost. I had to step away the first time, so I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not getting this. Something doesn't feel right, and then upon second playing, it's just that you have something fairly unique in your layout and design, which I think is a good thing. Who actually designed the layout of Full Throttle?
This is Dave Sanders.
Dave Sanders, okay.
Yeah, he's our chief game designer here at Highway Pinball.
Yeah, it really is a different game, and artwork especially. And artwork's so subjective, because I don't know that you can say there is a right or a wrong, but there's definitely different levels of acceptance, I guess. And looking at what I'm seeing, in the most recent updates and what's going to production is just, I think it looks much better to my eyes than the original pitch, so kudos to you guys. Let's talk about production. You posted this week on Pinside, you're building games. There's photos of cabinets in the factory, yep. And how exciting has that been for you this week?
It's been amazing, Nate, because one of the things when I get a bit of perspective and people say, ask me about the journey that we've gone on, and I think about 3.5 years ago, and we were doing stuff in my garage. That's where we started off. It really did start off in a garage, and it's funny. From then, it moved into the house. And I remember, and I'm sure I've got photos of it somewhere, and I'll have to bring them up at some point, maybe at a show some point. and I've got there's wires everywhere, wiring looms and playfields and screens and all kinds of tools everywhere, and it's just like a bomb's gone off, and it clearly wasn't the way to do it efficiently, but it was part of the progression of our history, if you like. And now, then we moved into a 14,000 square foot factory, which was on the industrial estate that we're out on now as well. But when we did the Bacardi game, we realised we were going to run out of space very, very quickly. And I just made the decision, because I knew there were other units available on the same industrial estate, that it was time to move before we went into full production of our pinball machines. Because, if we're running out of space building 251 games, which are, a third of the size or footprint of a pinball machine, and, a fraction of the complexity, then, bearing in mind all the space you need for sub-assemblies, assembly, the cabinets, we just didn't have enough space, and now we actually have a 42,000 square foot factory. We're using half of it at the moment, but we know that by the time we're going to get to sort of Alien production, we're going to need the other half as well.
How are you staffing this factory? Are these contract workers, or do you have actual full-time employees?
Yeah, full-time employees. We up till recently we were up to 12 full-time employees. We're up to, I think, 14 now. We should be up to 16 now within the next couple of weeks. You've got to be very careful, Nate, from a staffing point of view, because we're aiming by the end of this year. We're aiming to be up to production levels of 400 to 500 games a month. That's what we're going to be geared up to do. But at this point, we're starting off small. Our first run of games is simply 20 games in the first month. So now we're building 20 games, but we already have a lot of parts that we need for the next run of games, which is due to be 40 games for the second month. And we're just going to keep building up and up and up, making sure we get it right, making sure we're not cutting any corners, that we're really concentrating on quality control, and making sure that, when the games are going out with my name on it, that, people are going to enjoy them, that they're built to last. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to build a quality machine here. So we're happy to start off slowly. And then by the time we get to Alien, we know that it's good. Alien Pinball, we know it's going to be a very successful game. We've got a lot of people talking about this, and we've got a lot of people who want the game as well. And so we need to make sure that we've learnt all the production lessons, by the time we get to that game.
400 to 500 games a month sounds aggressive. Do you fear any? Is there any fear of production outpacing sales, or are you confident that the sales will be there, or are they there, or will they just come, you think?
I believe that because we're kind of going after a different market than our competitors, we're really going after the coin-op market. This is a coin-op game. A lot of the features that we're building into this game are designed to really give it a new lease of life. My company's mission statement is to make pinball a mainstream activity again. And, with all the best will in the world, you're not going to get that by having a game targeting, you're not going to get that by targeting collectors. So we have to, collectors is a massive market for us, don't get me wrong. But if we want to make pinball mainstream again, we have to get the product out. Sorry about that.
No, you're a popular man. I appreciate that.
Sorry about that.
It's all good.
Disconnect this phone. There we go. Yes, would you mind repeating that question again? I'm sorry, I got distracted by the phone there, Nate.
I guess you actually sort of caught me by surprise when you said 400 to 500 games a month, because I guess I'm just wondering, is there a market for 400 to 500 pinball machines in addition to what's out there right now to be sold? I mean, what are your thoughts on selling that many games a month?
Well, what I can tell you is this. Our first game is a non-licensed game, as you know, Full Throttle, but our next three games, of which Alien is the first one, and our second two licenses are both very, very strong licenses as well. And, the way that we've geared up our whole process is that we are going to have 3 games released a year. That's what we're geared up to do. But that's not to say that when we stop making one game, that we're not going back to it. As you see with some of our competitors. Stern, for example, does numbers of different runs. You look at AC/DC; they had many runs during the life of their contract. And something like Alien Pinball, for example, has got a lot of appeal. And especially as you start breaking into new markets, there's a lot of really interesting markets out there. You look at obviously China and Japan and South America, Brazil. You've got a great growing economy. And pinball's been big, especially in Brazil. It's been big in the past, but now it's not. And so with a new product and a new design product like we have, we're really hoping to get back into these markets again. So, when I say 400 to 500 games, that's what we're targeting. And I think some months we'll be able to achieve that. Maybe other months it might be less. Maybe it might be 300 games a month. But we need to gear ourselves up for whatever demand is going to come our way.
What advantage do you think Highway Pinball has being, not based in North America? Because I guess what's your advantage for being, based in Europe, and does that help you as far as sales and marketing?
Well, I mean, I'm very, I know pinball's origins, and I know that this is traditionally Americana. It's a North American thing. It's something that's made in Chicago over the years, and I'm very respectful of that. And I have to say, I have a lot of friends over in America. I've spent a lot of time in America over the years, and I know that the US at this point is our biggest market. And so, it's a very important market for us, and we're actually looking at possibly having a much bigger presence over there too. For a long time, I've been considering having a satellite office over there because we work with quite a few guys over in the States anyway, and we're looking at certain aspects like maybe making our own cabinets over there, or having our cabinets made over there, subcontracting that out. So we're only shipping game units over. So if you look at it that way, then you're effectively, let's say, reducing your shipping costs by about 2/3. Because you can get so many more game units in a container than you would have full games. So, North America is a very important market for us. And I don't think we're really, therefore, we're that disadvantaged by being over here. Of course, we can service Europe a lot better because we're based over here. So I really don't see that as being a problem at all.
No, I think that it could help you.
Thing as well. Sorry to go across you there. The other interesting thing is that shipping times are really not too bad between the UK and the US. The days of having to wait 1 to 2 months are over, really. If you plan it the right way, go the right routes, you can be looking at getting games over within a couple of weeks.
I think there's probably some advantage for you, and one thing I've been impressed with is you've added some really great features to the game, and you are modernizing the pinball machine by all means. The pricing of your games is fair, I guess, not exorbitant. We've seen some $8,000 to $10,000 releases in the last couple of years. How is pricing looked at from your company standpoint, and how important to you? I know your games are in the ballpark right now, US dollars, around $6,000. Is that an important target for you, and what does that play into your thought process as you go to build?
Well, it is, because, we could build the best pinball machine that anybody had ever seen, but until people are actually using it, until people are playing it and it's actually proving itself, then, you've already got an uphill battle compared to your competitors, because, let's face it, most of our competition, they are making games over in America. They're selling games over in America. They can do all of the pinball shows. I wanted to do the Texas Pinball Festival last week and go to that, but I couldn't go because I knew we were about to start production, and I didn't want to spread ourselves too thin and set ourselves back. We really want to get our games out to our customers as soon as possible. So there is a disadvantage location-wise when it comes to shows and so on. But, when we've got titles coming up here like Alien, and as I said, we've got a heck of a lot of interest over in the States, and okay, we have a lot of full throttles that are being sold over in America as well, but we're going to sell a lot of Alien games, I'm sure, from the way that demand is at the moment over to the States, and so people will obviously be talking to each other, comparing notes, and I don't want to say where we stand quality-wise to anybody else. What I will say is that we have used the quality base of WMS machines in the 90s as our base for quality, and we've worked from there. So we're trying to really build a quality machine here. We're not trying to cut any corners at all. Now, how people judge us against our competitors, that's not for us to go and talk about. So I think, time will tell.
Let's talk about the LCD screens that you're using in the playfield. And I know that there's been some talk, and I'd just like to confirm or deny this with you. Is there now an option for a second LCD screen to be up in the back box somehow?
Absolutely, yes. We've and again, this is something that we did get from feedback, because and it's funny, it's very easy when you've got a pinball company and you and your staff are working day in, day out on a product. You try to have as much what's the word I'm looking for? The word loses. I've lost the word. I'll find it in a minute. You try to keep an open mind as much as possible to what you're doing and have a good perception of what you're doing as well, and open your mind up to things. But sometimes, you follow a path and it's difficult to see outside of that path unless somebody points it out to you. And I remember actually we were at the EAG show in January, and some operators were saying to me that maybe there was something missing on the back box because, okay, it was lit on the back box, but there was no screen there drawing people to it. And we're a firm believer in what we're doing with the LCD screen in the playfield because, as players ourselves, we know that you miss out seeing all these wonderful animations because, if you're looking up, you're not looking down where the ball is. But if you're looking down and playing, then you get to see a lot of stuff peripherally as well. So we're a firm believer for the player that the LCD screen in the playfield was the right way to go. But we also now acknowledge that, let's say in situations like bars or locations like bars and clubs, and you have people in an ambient atmosphere, they're looking, they can't necessarily, they're not drawn to it. There's nothing going on the back box. Whereas having the optional screen there gives people a reason to look. So, to cut a long story short, Nate, and so I've given you a bit of a long-winded version there. Yes, we listen to people, and yes, we've put this in, and we're at the moment it mirrors the output on the backbox screen mirrors what's on the playfield. However, we're looking to develop this further and have two separate outputs in future games.
I would think the score would be a pretty important part to have up on the backbox. Just if for nothing else, if you're playing against your buddies, everybody kind of wants to see where everyone stands during a game.
Absolutely, you're right. I mean, in the past, for example, if people have had to bunch up scores and they're very small, whereas now, you could, let's say, when you're having a head-to-head competition, you could dedicate the backbox screen simply for people's scores. So, you have a big player one screen score if they're playing, and then you have smaller 2, 3, 4, whatever. But you can actually see at any one time just how you're doing against your, the people you're playing against.
There's multiple edition games coming out with both games announced so far, correct? There's standard and limited editions?
Yes.
Are there any interchangeability issues? Because I know that's one of the big selling points of your game is that you can buy one cabinet system and then buy game units after that to swap in playfields and artwork. Is there is there any difference there with the standards and the LEs?
No, I mean, the thing is, you can put the standard game into the LE and vice versa. There's absolutely nothing stopping you. It's the same system in both. So the only issues then become with what do you do if you have an LE game and you want to put another LE or a standard edition game in? Because, a limited edition will have things like a shaker motor. It will have things like the ramp lighting. Now, those will be available as optional extras to standard edition customers. And this is one thing that some people have been concerned about who want to buy LEs. But there will be a lot of features in the LE versions, a lot of items, let's say, or configurations within an LE that will make it unique, that you can't change. For example, on Alien, we have the lime green cabinet trim, which is part of the limited edition version. You can't buy that cabinet trim as an optional extra, for example, from an SE. So as long as so when you own the game and then you want to put a full throttle in it, you can change it over in the 10 to 15 minutes it takes to change over the artwork, the playfield and the software. You can change it over very quickly. But of course, you'll still have the lime green cabinet trim. So what we're actually looking to do is to sell standard edition cabinet trims as well. So if you're an LE customer and you want to have the standard edition trim as well, you should be able to buy that and have that as an optional extra on your game as well. But it wouldn't work out the other way round because that would be then unfair on LE customers.
That's fantastic. If somebody's interested in getting in on Full Throttle, as that goes into production right now, and I think there's nothing like being able to buy a game that's coming to you soon. I think that's a big selling point anytime somebody's trying to market any product. What would the time frame be if they got on the website and put a deposit in right now?
Well, we're looking at obviously our first run of games is sold out, as you would expect,
sure.
And we then have runs of 40 games. We're doing 2 runs of 40 games afterwards, and then we're going up from there. So what we're trying to do as well, in order to keep shipping costs down as low as possible, is we are trying to pull games together as much as possible, because quite clearly, sending one game over to Australia by itself, for example, becomes a false economy. So if you can send over half a container or container load of games, it makes more sense, and it makes more sense then from a financial perspective to your customers too. So the bottom line is there is no set time. But we juggle things around to try to satisfy our customers as much as possible, and to obviously deliver games in the cheapest way possible as well.
Absolutely. Looking at Aliens, I don't know what you want to tell me as far as how far along the design process are. When might the pinball community see some, further pictures of the game, and when might we see something that's flipping and shooting pinballs?
Well, the flipping and shooting pinballs has already been shown just in the flippable whitewood to a degree. So we've got that far. But the thing is, the whole purpose with the flippable whitewood was to try to test shots, see what worked, see what didn't work, and then go on from there. So we have at the moment currently been designed what is the second, and which will be a much more definitive version of the game. We've learned a lot of lessons from the first whitewood. We've kept what really worked, and we've changed some things as well. To give you an answer as to development timelines, this has been a little bit of a bone of contention, in that we were hoping to have this as a March-April release. Now, quite clearly, I'm talking to you here now at the start of April. We're not releasing anything in April, and we're still a way away from being able to release the game. But there are reasons behind that, and what you have to understand is when you're dealing with it goes back to the whole licensing thing again. Is that you go to a movie studio, and some movie studios, getting access to the materials you want is a lot easier than working with others. But that's not to say that the other studio is being more difficult. What you have to understand with somebody like Fox is that this is one of the, if not the biggest assets in their stable. You look at the whole Alien universe, and it's more active now than it's been in many, many years.
Absolutely.
There's not just one film on the horizon, Prometheus 2 in that universe, but you've got Alien 5 now coming out in the next couple of years as well. So, it's one of those timeless licenses that, bear in mind it was 1979 and I was 8 years old. I don't know how old you were, Nate, when
I was born in 1979.
Were you? There you go. So, you're an Alien child.
Yes, and I loved the movies. They scared me to death. They're a big part of my childhood, for sure.
Well, exactly, and same with me as well. I mean, I think I mentioned to you before, it is genuinely my favourite film of all time, and that's the reason why I went after this license in the first place. But, when you're dealing with something so big, you have to understand that there's a lot of people who are involved in the decision-making processes there. And one of the key parts you have to get right before you can even start getting down into the nitty-gritty bits like the artwork elements and what sound effects are being used and this, that, and the other, you have to have the overall concept approved. You have to have everybody on board with what it is that you're doing. Now, we got concept approval late last year. That wasn't an issue, but we had to have some specific directions as to where we could go with regards to the artwork on the playfield, on the back glasses, and so on. And also as well, when you're dealing with something like Alien, you want to do it the most justice possible. And we felt around the end of last year, so it was around sort of December time, we felt that we needed to do more with the toys, that we could deliver a better game than what we had already promised. And so it got us thinking, and we've got some really exciting toys now in the pipeline. One in particular, which will become the main toy in the game, which nobody knows about yet. And all I will say is at the moment is that it's heavily dependent on the Xenomorph itself. And this toy really is what an Alien game needs. We're all convinced about it. We've had a sort of small working group we put this to as well. They agree as well. And we think it's really going to bring some added value to the game. So, as for the development process, what I can tell you is timeline-wise is we're all now, and the goalposts have shifted a little bit. We're looking to have this released in time for my show, which is the UK Pinball Party in August. So we're looking to have games fully built there and even have started production by that stage as well. We don't want to be leaving it any later than that. So we're really pushing forward now, especially as Full Throttle has come to the end of its development cycle. We can have all hands on deck now with Alien, which is what we're doing. So we're developing many elements at the moment. We're developing a lot of the individual art elements. shots. We're also now we're just moving into the modelling side of things too. So there's a number of models that are going to be developed over the coming weeks. Now, then they'll be effectively hand built. Then they'll be scanned in. They'll be submitted to approval. Then we'll get moulds made, and then we can start making those aspects of it too. So we've got a lot of work going on, and I think everybody's agreed. No one would want us to rush this game and get out an inferior product. So I think having that bit of extra time now should allow us to do what we need to really do this license justice.
I still think that's an impressive timeline from announcing a game that we didn't really know was coming in October to possibly shipping games by the end of the summer. That to me is very impressive, and I wish you guys a lot of luck on that. I think.
Thank you very much.
I think you're going to have a big hit on your hands with that. It was announced a few months back that Barry Ausler had joined the team,
yes.
the design team. How did that come about, and what might we expect to hear throughout the year on a project that Barry's working on with you guys?
Well, at the moment, Barry is actually working on games 3 and 4 for us at the moment. Game 3 is all ready to be built now. We've just, we've added some really cool toys into the mix as well on Barry's third game. And it's a really, we all love the design of it, I have to say. Barry had a reputation of being, the fastest gun in town. In the WMS days, he's the guy that really turned games around quickly and was brought on board to help out with games to get them finished quickly. So Barry is, I have the massive respect for Barry. He was always one of my favourite designers. I've got many of his games in my own collection. Games like Solar Fire, Dirty Harry, Jackpot. I think I probably got 6 or 7 of his games in my own collection. And so it was a dream really to work with Barry. And he's everything I thought he would be and more. He's very so knowledgeable about what he does. He's got a great eye for a great shot, and it's been a pleasure working with him so far.
Games 3 and 4 are both licenses, I believe you said?
Correct, yes.
How is the license acquiring? What's the thought process when you look at all the things you could possibly build on a pinball machine? Alien was your favorite movie, and obviously sci-fi, and it just plays right into pinball. Where do you go? Are you looking at just lists of movies and shows and things like that? How does that process start, or is it really in your head first off?
That's a very good question, really. We have had a lot of conversations in-house about titles that would be good for pinball. And, in some of those, we've narrowed it down. Then we have a short list. And then, myself as well. I would consider myself to be, pretty knowledgeable about pinball, about games that have been in the past, And when you see an overview, you think, well, why did that game never get made? Or maybe that game got made, but it really wasn't as good as it could have been. Maybe if we took it on, and maybe there's been a long period of time since that last game, maybe we could do something really good with that. Then you ask yourself your questions: is this in vogue? Would this be good? There's many, many questions there. But we've just done when we've gone after licenses, we've just tried to go after licenses we think are going to interest as big a demographic as possible. You can't, for example, have every game being a cartoon theme pin. It's not really adult orientated. Adults need to be treated. This is one thing I always think is that adults want to be treated like adults. It's all very well having a family pin that your children can play and so on, but sometimes you want to have some beers with your friends and maybe enjoy pinball, which has got a bit of profanity in it or whatever. It's just a bit of fun. It's a bit of entertainment. So I'm open to all types of licenses. I just want to be able to, my company to be able to provide pins that are going to, let's say, be as appealing to as big a demographic as possible over the years.
Sure.
So we try to do something different with each game that we're doing.
Kind of a question in a different direction. Having this factory now, you have a pinball factory. Is there an opportunity for you to build other companies' games? If somebody designed a game, had it all ready to go, but didn't have a place to build their game, are you set up to do something like that?
Absolutely, yes. And we even take it a step further than that, in that we're going to be doing a lot of things in-house. And you'll be, if anybody who follows what we're doing on Facebook or what we're doing on Pinball News, we do regular Facebook and Twitter updates. But what we like to show people is the progress we're making as a factory too. I mean, what some of your listeners may have seen recently is that we've actually just bought a CNC machine. So we are actually going to be cutting out our own plastics, our own wood, we'll be doing that in-house. And we're going to be doing that with printing and other aspects too, because we want to try to keep pinball as affordable as possible, because prices have just been spiraling out of control. And if you want to make a quality pinball machine in today's market and have it competitively priced, and I think as well, our own system, our interchangeable system addresses the whole budget side of things too, because people can buy game upgrades for a fraction of the price of a new pinball machine. But the point is, if you want to do all of this and be price competitive, then I think you have to look at doing a lot of the processes in-house. And the other thing to factor in mind is not only the financial benefits of that too, but also the quality control aspects. Because if you're subcontracting all this stuff out, you've got other people making playfields. I mean, just to give you an idea, some playfields that we had to reject recently, they came in just because they'd been sanded down too hard, and you had like little steps in the playfield, and you think, well, you want people to be taking good care of this. This is a precision product, and so we felt that long term, the only way we were going to be able to really keep a close check on quality is to do a lot of this stuff in-house. And so, yes, to sort of come back round to your question, can we do stuff for other people, whether it's just making playfields for them in the future, or even, let's say, bringing their game into our design system, into our game change system, or even just making a game, in a standard regular cabinet as a one-off sale. We will be able to do all of this.
I mean, and I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole on this, but having a system like yours where things are modular and you can literally pull a playfield and put something in, could you see, the possibility of, a game that had been built in the past, and I'm not naming any names or companies necessarily, but just if somebody had the rights to build, game XYZ from 1987, could you see that sort of idea, be transferred into your platform? Is that something of any interest?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we'd be very interested in doing things like this. I mean, we want to be innovators in this industry. We want to do a lot and bring a lot to pinball. And, of course, we're making our own games, but does that mean that we can't do other people's games? Of course not. We can make other people's games. We're going to look at other pinball-related products as well. We're going to push the boundaries out there too. We all recognise and know what a pinball machine is, how it looks, how it plays. But you can have different sizes of pinball machines. There's different ways you could package a pinball machine. And, we really want to look into many different aspects over the next couple of years.
Does the size of the cabinet and the full throttle, that holds you to that kind of playfield size, this wide body size for all your titles coming forward?
Correct, yes.
Yes, okay, that's interesting. Is there anything else you'd like to sort of get out to the listeners of this show as far as full throttle coming out, how to buy a game, where they might next see a game?
Well, as far as our schedule goes, we've been invited to a couple of shows during the course of the year we're going to try to attend. We're definitely going to be at Pinball Expo again in October, and we're looking to be at IAPA in November as well. So there's a number of shows that we're going to be doing this year. As for, if anybody is interested in purchasing a full throttle in the US market, in each run that we're doing, machines are going to America. And so we have a lot of customers, a lot of pre-order customers, especially for Alien, but we have a lot of customers for Full Throttle 2 in the States. So, our prices are reflective of shipping from a US port, which is more than likely going to be Chicago. So in other words, we take care of all the shipping costs to get it to Chicago. So anybody who buys a machine is only paying for the direct shipping cost of their game from Chicago to wherever they are in the States.
Is all the sales handled direct through the company? There's no distributors, am I correct on that?
Correct. At the moment, for the USA, yes. We're handling US distribution ourselves. And one of the reasons we're doing that at the moment, Nate, is because, if we're working with somebody and they've got, whatever it is, 15, 20%, margin or markup from being our distributor, then all the hard work we've done to keeping our costs down to make sure we're competitive in the US market goes out the window. And then all of a sudden we're not competitive. But, and I really want to, if we're going to build pinball back up again, we've got to be competitive from a pricing point of view. And so we've got to keep our costs down. So, we can connect directly with our customers. And especially if we're going to have our US office over there in the next year, which we're still hoping to do, then, we'll have direct communication from our US office with customers as well.
What about Australia? Australia's my second biggest country as far as listenership goes. How are games getting to Australia, and what is that going to do to the pricing of a Full Throttle or an Aliens?
Well, we're still trying to tie down our distribution deal at the moment. We've been speaking to one party in particular, and we both want it to happen. We just, I suppose we've got a little bit tied up with what we're doing over here with our production over here. So from our side, we probably need to open up our lines of communication a bit better. But absolutely, we will have an Australian distributor, and hopefully we can announce that within the next coming weeks.
Excellent. Could you speak at all to the idea of, quote, pre-orders and deposits and how that's going to, be looked at from your point of view going forward in the wake of some of the things that we've seen in the pinball community?
Well, the thing is, I made the decision that I wasn't going to take any pre-order money for any of my games until we had a product which was virtually ready. And so we didn't even open up our order book for Full Throttle until around, I believe it was September, or it was either late August, early September. So I think, in fact, it was time for my show, The Pinball Party, would have been mid-August. So we didn't open up our order book there. So the first couple of years of development there, we were just doing that off our own bag. But even then, when we dipped our toe into the pre-order market, it was only because Full Throttle was going to be nearly ready. And okay, I admit that we're running sort of behind schedule with Full Throttle. We have been up till now for about 3 or 4 months. So when we did open up our order book in August, we were hoping to be shipping before Christmas. Now, of course, we've had the delays, but we are where we are now. As for Alien, originally I didn't want to go down the pre-order route for that, but the reason I did is because I knew that there were a lot of titles out there being offered from, whether you want to call these people boutique manufacturers or even bigger companies, and I thought it's such a competitive environment here at the moment, and I knew just how popular Alien would be, that I wanted to give people the choice to decide whether it was going to be Alien or whether it was going to be this game or that game, and they could just make their choice. And so by doing that, I also made a conscious effort that if anybody was going to make a deposit with my company for a game, that their exposure would be kept to a minimum, because as you rightly say, there are reports that there are big liabilities because maybe some people have paid in full for games, and it's a tragic circumstance really, and of course we all hope that that's going to work itself out. From my own company's perspective, we've only been taking a $1,500 deposit on a game, and we don't actually ask. So for Alien, for example, a $1,500 deposit is fully refundable minus any small charges from transaction fees, for example, if it's outside of a certain time. But effectively it's a fully refundable deposit, and then we don't ask for any more money until the week we manufacture the games. And we've done that with Full Throttle as well. We started manufacturing Full Throttles now, and the first 20 customers have all then paid their 50% payments then. So it keeps that safety net in place for customers. So, but moving forwards, I actually like the model that Stern uses for releasing games. I think they announce a game, and when they announce a game, they're about to start production of it. There are a couple of weeks, let's say, away from production, or they've already started producing it, they're delivering to games. That's a model I think is very good for the market. And this is a market that, after Alien, this is what we want to be falling into after that.
Absolutely. Your project was sort of on my mind when we were seeing things happen, and I kept reading people say, pre-order's dead, pre-order's dead, and I kept thinking, it's not dead if you're going to be proven to build a game like you guys are just about to be when Full Throttle starts shipping. I think that's going to be a major landmark. And also, that game will be rolling off the line, and then your second game, which would, quote, be a pre-order, is one of such high sort of, value to a lot of people into the theme. Pre-order's not going to be dead if it's in the right circumstances, but I do agree with you. The Stern, in a perfect world, the Stern way of doing things is the best, obviously. And I think it's great that you're kind of thinking to get to that point. That's awesome. Andrew, I really appreciate it. We were talking about maybe doing 20 minutes. We've gone over 40, which I think is awesome. And I wish you guys the best of luck. I'd love to have you come back on the show when games are rolling out in people's rooms, and maybe we have a little more to talk about Alien at the time. But thank you very much for spending some time with me.
It's my pleasure, Nate. It's my pleasure. And anytime you want me to come back and have a chat, just give me a call. I'm here.
Okay, we will do it. Thank you very much.
No problem at all. Thanks a lot, Nate.
Hey guys, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed that interview. Amazing. Hundreds and hundreds of games can be built in the Highway Pinball facility. They're working on games 3 and 4. Ambitious, yes. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's a well laid out plan, even if it's not the plan maybe we've been seeing with, quote, boutique pinball companies. I think the gist and the takeaway of this interview is Highway Pinball has very little interest in being a boutique or a small independent pinball company. They're aiming for the stars. I think that's awesome. I can't wait to see Full Throttle Games getting out there. I can't wait to see Alien Games with art and the LCD and flipping. That's going to be awesome. So thank you again to Andrew Highway for coming on the show. Thank you, friendly listeners, for downloading or streaming or however you're getting Coast to Coast Pinball and listening. I will talk to you again very soon. Take care.